I've been doing with recording is because I have two of these classes a day. I've been recording the first one and then not recording, because it's a duplicate. Today I didn't get the first one in, so I am recording this time. Had a problem this morning too. Wound up that other class is at 8 a.m. and my normal 20-minute I-94 drive turned into over an hour this morning, and I got here pretty late. I got here a few minutes late for class. Very interesting. Also, yesterday, interesting traffic. You guys, are you all familiar when you get off of 94 heading toward the east? I get off on the Highway 100 exit, and then the idea is I take Highway 100 up to Blue Mound. Just that trip from the exit to Blue Mound, what is that? I'd say about 6/10 of a mile. Yesterday, it took me 50 minutes. It's a half a mile. It just was gridlock, and then you got everybody coming off the 94 West exit ramp merging. That was a good test of how patient. Yeah, exactly. How patient could I be, and how many people would I murder while I was waiting? And fortunately, it stayed at 0. Okay. All right. Plan for today. Because this is our first assignment due date, I'm sure you came up with some problems. In fact, I got a few more emails today than I normally do. Things like, I was trying to remember, what was one of the questions? I had somebody who didn't understand what the assignment meant. Yeah, and then they didn't know which ones do you do, the examples or the exercises, and that is kind of confusing in the book. And so, anyway, today I want to just clear some issues up, okay? So anything you want to go through, I'll go through it. We'll try some things. That's kind of the main thing. Then I want to give you the coming attractions kind of for chapter 2, okay?
You said you have
Yes,
you
approximately.
want us to do like the bar graphs on yourself and then do like the lesson answers, you want to do like half the problem?
Here's a good question. When I said do half of them I said do about half of them on computer and half of them manually. First of all, that is a little complicated in this regard. There's a couple things you cannot do on computer. I don't know how to do a stem plot, and I don't think you can, honestly. Maybe there's a way, but I haven't figured it out. So a stem plot was only manual, and then, so do I mean every kind of problem half and half? No, just about half of them on computer and half of, just kind of in a general whole. So what I didn't want is somebody who did all the problems except for one on computer. That's not half and half. Or somebody who did almost everything on computer and they threw in just one problem manually. I was looking for a better, more even mix. So, thanks. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another issue. Now, let me show you what I've got here, and then you can open up for questions. I did the assignment, and I wrote down my manual answers, and I scanned them, so we can look, if you want to see what am I looking for. And then I did some of them on computer, and I've got those here too. But now I may not have the same ones on computer that you have, but that's okay. We'll work some out. Okay, so where do you want to start? Issues you want to bring up? Yes. Yeah, I didn't have a third option for calculator, did I? Well, you did this manually? So, I forgot, what was I doing here? Just getting the total? Oh yeah, because they wanted to know how many were in other colors. Thank you, I couldn't remember what that problem was. I wouldn't be upset if you didn't have this on there. Another question. Yeah, no matter how simple you think it is, it's probably a good question to ask. Yeah. 21. Let's see what we got. 21. First, I'm going to get my bearings here and see what that problem was. Name that variable. Yep, that's the name that variable. I almost guarantee is going to be prime time very soon now because it is so cool and exciting. Just kidding. You were supposed to display, use the 4 histograms, the gender of the students in a large. Oh, which was which? First of all. Which is which? Yeah. Okay, so let me explain that one to you. Everybody 21. We've got, here are our choices. The gender of the students in a large college course recorded as 0 for male and 1 for female. Well, which 2 graphs do we have to be down to? Doesn't that pretty much get us down to C and D? Okay. And then, let's skip ahead to number 3. Number 3 says the handedness of students in the class. 0 for right-handed, 1 for left-handed. Now, generally, I mean, there's always more right-handers than left-handers. So, that one almost has to be C, doesn't it? Doesn't that kind of tell you that number 1 probably has to be D by elimination? Okay, now how about the other 2? The heights of students in the same class. Now, in the video, there was a clue about that. You remember that living histogram we saw? They showed a snapshot of a bunch of, I think it was ladies by height, and Teresa, the announcer, mentioned that was very normal, and you notice it was very symmetrical. Heights are always going to turn out that way. And so, that pretty much tells you that one is B, because that one's more symmetrical than A. And then what does that leave us with? The lengths of the words used in Shakespeare. And just by default, it has to be A, and sure enough, Shakespeare did use more short words than long words, so that's why that one's skewed to the right and heavy on the low end. So that's kind of, just by discussion, that's how I would think that one through. Another one you want to look at, or question about procedure? 19. Oh yeah, the marijuana one. I happened to do that one on computer. Okay, here's my marijuana problem. Now, I added something here, and I want to discuss this with you. I'm glad you brought this one up. This last line up here was not in the book. Okay, now I added it, and I wanted to show you why I added it. You see, the problem with these numbers up on the top is the numbers are all different. What I mean by that is there are a lot more drivers that never had marijuana than those that did. I mean, the numbers are, it's kind of like, here, the way the numbers are now, it'd be like if 2 roommates, let's say, came back to the dorm room after a day of classes, and one says, hey, I had a quiz, and I had 7 right. And the other guy says, oh yeah, I had a test, and I had 8 right. Okay, who did better? You can't tell. Why not? Because it's not really so important how many you had right. Isn't it how important how many out of how many? Or what percent? So the guy with 7 on the quiz might have had 7 out of 8 right. And the guy that was bragging about his 8 had 8 out of 200 right. And obviously he did not do better. You know, he probably went, oh yeah, I had 8. And that's not better. What's my point? These numbers don't mean a whole lot unless we figure out what percent. So what I did is I added a column here, a row, for what percent of the accidents caused in the case of the people who never. And 59 accidents out of 452 drivers is about 13%. What percent of the people who were in the 1 to 10 category? That was 15.7%. over here it's 21.4%, and over here it's 32%. So as they had more marijuana, the stats clearly showed they had more accidents. And then, were you supposed to make a histogram? I made my histogram based on this data. So you'll notice I have percents plotted here. And, you know, those that never, lower number. Those that had more and more accidents. Now, I know some of you got, if you just plotted the raw numbers, you got histograms that look the same, but it's really important. You have to think of percents. Just because those two roommates, who had more rights, doesn't tell me anything. Or I shouldn't say it doesn't tell me anything, but it doesn't tell me much. So there's one where you had to think a little bit and add a little bit. I was hoping you would think that through. So there's 19. Another one to look at. And somebody in the last class said, how did you get that? How did you get it so those labels are on the bottom? Honestly, I didn't do a histogram to do it that way. If you just do a straight histogram, you know, with the data analysis histogram, you'll just get a kind of an you won't get, well, first of all, you won't get 3D. And secondly, I think your labeling isn't quite as good, but that's not important. What's important is that you did percents, and then you just made a histogram of those four. By the way, you know how up until now, when we've done a histogram, and when you're in the input box, we've always been clicking and dragging vertically. Can you click and drag horizontally? Yeah, that works too. So when it says input, we could have clicked and, you know, it gets that. You can do horizontal too. Another question. A histogram?
Yeah, on the computer again.
Yeah. I think what I'll do is I'll do this state thing. I forgot what this was. Percents of Hispanics, I think it was. Okay. So let's say you want to do a histogram. They told you to round it off. So I just had a column that rounded it off. Okay. Then, now you're going to have to tell me, do you want me to give you instruction on how to turn data analysis on again?
No.
Okay. And which Excel are you in?
No.
Cool. So we click on data analysis. Pick histogram. Click OK. And now we got all our inputs. While that thing is flashing in the input range, click and drag. Release. Now, click on the output range and then click in this output range rectangle. Get that cursor flashing and just point to where you want your report to go. I usually like to stick it close by to the right. Make sure you click the chart output, and then you're all set to go. Click on OK. We should get a frequency distribution and a histogram that's kind of midgetized. You can see it working in the bottom left corner. It says calculating histogram. I have about 9 programs running in the background, so it's taking a little longer. There we go. We got our frequency distribution. Click on the histogram, stretch it down a little bit. Print. You're in great shape. So what is this? By the way, this histogram is, hey, is it symmetric? Is it a symmetric distribution? No. It is skewed to the right. Remember, it's the long pointy end that is where the skew is. You know, it's heavier on the left, but it's skewed to the right. Okay, and what does it tell you? Why is it heavy on the left? I mean, what does heavy on the left tell you about Hispanic populations in states? What do the heavy bars on the left tell you? That's where the lower numbers are. So what it's saying is, a lot more states have pretty small percentages of Hispanics, and very few states have more. So, I'm going to try to get to a part where you can interpret graphs like that too. Okay, another question. You want to see some of my manual ones to see if you have enough work? You know, I know some people always wonder, boy, am I doing enough? I mean, there's nothing special about this, but maybe, I guess you've already seen 1.1 and 1.3. Here's my 1.5, where I did a manual frequency distribution, and then I had to make my decision. How wide am I going to make my classes? In this case, I wound up with an outlier way out there on the right. I mean, see, I would call this a nice amount of work. I'm showing you how I did my tally. I haven't told you how I figured out my gap, but you can see that I wrote down the high and the low, because the high minus the low tells me that the total distance was 43. Okay, now what between 5 and 10 divides nicely into about 43? Well, I could think of 43 as 45, and I suppose I could divide by 9. You know, anyway, or 5. So, did you guys get the split stems problem? Here's 1.9, and on top is it's done without split stems, and the bottom one is which stem plot is better? The one on the bottom is better. You don't really want these things with these long branches like that. It's better to have it more spread out where you can see a little bit more. I don't know, nothing special about the rest of this. So I'm not looking for complete sentences or anything like that. Anybody else? Are there any other like computer skills that you wanted to look at? Did everybody get their analysis tool pack turned on? Otherwise, you would have been probably stuck in the computer part. Well, all right. Then I'm just going to give you, I mean, you can still ask questions later, but I'm going to give you a quick preview of what's coming attractions here. I'll give you an assignment. It's going to be some reading this time. I'm not collecting this time. I think I already said that. I know some people are right away thinking, oh man, I did all my work and now he didn't collect it. Yeah, well, I'm not going to collect them all. And just be sure that you're ready consistently, okay? Because even though I don't attempt to do this, it happens every time where somebody goes, oh man, you picked today. Oh, not today. That's, you know what, so have it ready each time and you won't have to worry about that. Okay, here's what chapter 2 is about. Describing distribution with numbers. And I just threw up a graphic here. Good old data analysis. Guess what? We're going to be camped out in data analysis for actually several chapters. So I have good news for you. You won't have to relearn that part, and you won't have to return on your data analysis. Last chapter, we just stuck on histogram. One of the places we're going to camp out for quite a while in this chapter is the one that's highlighted there, descriptive statistics. And it's pretty simple stuff, but so good news, we're going to still be using data analysis, just some of the other options. And then I thought maybe it was time just to double check here we are starting the second chapter. I want to make sure, because if some of you aren't at some of these places, it's going to make the class pretty rotten. Has everybody gotten it. I'm concerned that everybody's gotten access to my WLC. If you have a problem with something like that, would you please let me know? Because I think I know we can overcome it, and I'll help you. But don't sit there and think, no, I'm the only one, I'm not going to speak up. Please speak up so we can get over this right away. Something that's been an issue in the past. In my WLC, when you get into our course, there are tabs along the left, Chapter 1, Chapter 2. In the past, I've had a couple people who could not see the tabs. If anything like that happens to you, would you please let me know? They got a really weird something that I'm not used to, that sometimes there's an electronic switch that I have to flip saying my students have permission to do this. Well, my students have permission to do everything, so I don't think that way, and sometimes I forget to go turn that on, and then you can't even see it. So let me know right away if I show you something in class and you go home and go, I don't have that. I got to know, because I got to get that turned on for you. This is just a reminder. Have you checked the learning objectives for Chapter 1? I don't know if you remember this, but when you're on the website, right under Chapter 1, it tells you there's a list of all the things I'm supposed to teach you in Chapter 1. And after Chapter 1 is a good time to do that. Even though we won't have a test until after Chapter 3, don't forget to keep yourself up on that. Let me remind you, and then we'll take a peek at the learning objectives for Chapter 2. One piece of news I have for you is that the learning objectives I think we only had 4 in Chapter 1. I think there are 7 for Chapter 2. So, give me a second here. So, Chapter 1, just to show you real quickly, here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Identify categorical and quantitative variables. 2. Interpret and be able to come up with histograms. 3. Be able to read and come up with your own stem plots. 4. Be able to produce a time plot and be able to read one. Okay, Chapter 2. Here's the new list. Now there are 7. Find the mean of data. That's another name for average. Secondly, find the median of data. Third, be able to compare the mean and the median. There's supposed to be an N here. It says media. It's supposed to be median. We're going to learn how to find quartiles. 5, come up with a 5-number summary for a bunch of data. 6, be able to calculate the standard deviation, both automatically and manually. It's it's a little bit grueling manually, but we're not going to just want you to know how to do it that way. And then number 7, which measures of center and spread to make use of. Up until now, the spread has just meant low to high. Standard deviation is going to give you another tool that will tell you about the spread. So anyway, that's our new list. That's what we're going to be going at. Anybody else? Make sure. Anybody still have any questions about assignments? For next time then, your assignment is start reading Chapter 2, get at least well into it, and we'll start going at that on Friday. And I guess we're done early. Thank you.